Hello, digital art students. It's Mr. House. Today we're looking at part 2 of the 4-letter word exercise. You can find it on the agenda of your class website. When you click on it, it opens up here. And you have already done exercise 1 imitation, where you've copied the love artwork. If you haven't done that yet, you need to click here and take a look at that video and finish that artwork first. So if you are ready, you're ready to emulate. So the next step is to emulate. Here is Mr. Brainwash's example, where he stole Robert Indiana's idea and just changed the letters to spell out punk. So you're going to do something similar. Now, your 4-letter word must be school appropriate. We know what that means. Not the word punk, because that's our main example. Don't just do that. And you need to carefully design to match the typeface used by Robert Indiana. And you can tell this one was pretty carefully designed. You're going to be building it over this, and I think you could do a better job. Notice how thick this serif is compared to how thin this one is. You can do a way better job, and I will help you do that in this movie. So here are the steps to get started on the website, but let's jump over to Illustrator right now and see where we're at. You'll notice here that I have a letter that shows outlines only, and I'm going to show you how to do that. I started with a letter that I created in the typeface Baskerville, and Century School Book already also works for that. So we're just going to delete this right now, and on a new layer, you're going to start copying over your love document. So right now we need to save as. That's an important thing to do right now. So you're going to save as the name of whatever you're going to do. So let's do something hard like Stan. I'm going to save this as Stan. If you know and love a Stan in your life, you're welcome to use that word. I just picked it randomly as a 4-letter word. So I'm on a new layer. I've renamed this file Stan, and I'm just going to click here with the text tool, and you can notice right now that I've already got this set to 400 points. All right, you can't even choose it that high. You have to double click on this and type it in. All right, I have chosen Baskerville, and again, I could also try Sentinel or Century School Book, and either one will work. Let's see here. I am going to start with the letter S. All right, so I'm going to do a capital S, and there it is. And I'm going to move this into place, and I can grab a corner and size it a little larger. And right away I can see that this thing came up as regular. So to change it, with the text tool, I double click on it, it selects it, and then I can go to bold. And bold is going to get me closer to what the original love art looks like. And I'm going to grab a corner, hold the shift key, and continue making it a little larger so that I am getting it to fill a similar space as this L. Now notice this L ends right about here, and so I'm going to bring it into place, and then I need to pan up. I hold the space bar, click up here, and I'm going to grab a corner, hold the shift key, and bring it down till it fits in the space of the other letter. All right, I can use the arrow keys, nudge it up and down. I think it needs to down a little bit more. and a little bit more. And the reason I'm picking the S in stand first is that it's kind of the most important letter in this project because the L is the first letter. It establishes the size, the style. I need to modify this so it really fits in the entire space of this L here. All right, so that's looking pretty good to start with. All right, so notice here I've got a layer. I'm going to name it S, and we're ready to go to the next step. With this object selected, this letter selected, I come up to Type and Create Outlines. And now what I've done is I've taken it away from a letter that I can edit. Like before I could double click on it and type a different letter and it would come up. Now I can't. I've just created the exact outlines that Illustrator uses to create this letter. Okay? And from here we're going to zoom in and start modifying this. So I need to stretch this letter out to fill this space. So here's what I'm going to do first. Go into the toolbox here and choose the direct select tool. I click once out here, and making sure all of these other layers are locked, which they are, I can click and drag over points that I want to use. And notice I'm carefully dragging over just this upper part of the S. So I have selected what I believe to be these points, and let's find out. So I'm going to use the arrow key and start nudging them over. I can see that I haven't selected all the points that I wanted to. So I'm going to hit undo and go back to where I was. And went a little too far. There we go. One more time. So instead, I'll start from here. I'm going to click and drag. And now I know I've got those top points there. Be careful not to go too far into the letter down here. And there we go. So I'm pretty sure I've got these points selected as well as these points. Let's try one more time to nudge it over. So I'm simply using the arrow key here and moving this over. And you can see I'm already getting some distortion here. And that's going to be part of what you're dealing with. You have to figure out how to get this letter to fit this shape, this size, and look like Robert Indiana's artwork. All right, so I'm going to stop there because I think it's taking a little too far. I'm going to try some more points. This time I can click here and let's zoom in. And I don't really like the fact that this layer is showing up as a yellow layer because it's hard for me to see right now. So I'm going to choose a different color. The way I did that, I simply double click on this layer and I can choose a different, let's try light blue. That is a little bit easier. Now, notice this little point here is showing up as white. So I'm going to click on it, hold the shift key, click on another one, and notice that allows me to select multiple points. Click on this one and on this one. I'm going to zoom out and we're going to see what happens. Alright. Now I know I'm going to get some distortion. This area is going to get thicker because I only have these 4 points chosen. Alright, so I'm going to start nudging these over. And I'm just going to go as far as the serif up here. And remember, serif is just the tail that's on a letter. So we've matched this so far. Alright, zoom out a little more. And right now I'm assessing. Okay, I have some distortion up here that I want to deal with. And I have some thickness here, which doesn't look too bad so far. Remember this. Notice how thick this L is here, so we have a little bit of wiggle room to go from. Alright, next I'm going to match the size of the serif. See how thick this part is? This is much thinner. That's the same part of the letter and I want it to match. So I'm going to zoom in and I'll click on this point, hold the shift key, and this point. Watch, I will just nudge them over till I have a serif that I think is similar thickness to this. That's good. And you'll notice that here the letter isn't straight up and down. I think I can fix that by clicking on that point, nudging it over till it looks straight up and down. Okay, let's zoom out. All right, I can see that this serif is thick. And this one is still thin. So I am going to take this point, hold the shift key, and this point, and nudge them out this way till I have something similar. Okay, so I've addressed my serifs so far, and now let's come in here. Now here is some distortion that I don't like. So I'm going to see if I can fix this a couple of ways. I'll select this point, hold the shift key, this anchor, and an anchor and point are the same thing. And this one. So I've selected these 4 points. I'm going to arrow them over. And notice I'm getting a little more thickness in this letter, which is okay. We need to thicken it up. And the distortion here is getting a little less. Okay, I'm just going to do a little bit at a time here. Okay, so my S is getting wider, thicker. We're not all the way to the size that we need yet, but we're getting there. Next, I know that another way to help with this distortion is going to be to add some thickness into the letter here. All right, so to do that, I'm going to click on this anchor, hold the shift key, this one, and this one. And we're going to nudge them down a bit. And now I can see that my thickness is looking similar to what the serif is doing. Okay. One other thing I'll do is this little crook here. I think it would be better if I nudged it over here to match this area a little bit better. Now there are a lot of subtleties in type design, and so there are some things that you pick up along the way. Really, you want to trust your eye. What looks right? Okay, so next, I see we've added some thickness here. That means I need to do it down here as well. Now you can see how elegantly this letter's been created. We only have 1 point here and 1 point here. So I'm simply going to click on this point. And remember, as soon as I select 1 point with the direct select tool, any other point that's been selected gets deselected. The only way to select multiple points is by holding the shift key. Okay, we have this one selected, and I'm going to nudge it up with the arrow till I get some more thickness. And then I realize, you know what? This one needs to go up a little bit. I'll click on this one, do it separately, add a little thickness there. And once again, I'm going to click here and maybe nudge this over a little bit. There we go. And we're getting there. I'm going to select this point and this point, and we're going to, there we go, add a little more thickness. Okay, I'm going to zoom out. And let's see what we're looking at. All right, so far it's looking pretty good. I still see some distortion up here, but we're going to address that a little later. I want to try stretching this to make it wider still so that it comes out closer to the point where the edge of the L is. So to do that, I'm going to click and drag over these points. Whoops, and I didn't get them all, so I'll hold the shift key here and here. And I'm actually going to add these ones in as well. And here. All right. So I've selected all of these points on the top here. and I'm going to arrow them over, and I'm seeing some distortion already here. So before I go any further, I'm going to hold the Shift key and deselect these. And we'll arrow over a little more. All right. And now we're going to come down and select this point, this point, this point, this point, and I'm holding the Shift key, keep them all selected. And I'm even going to select this one down here. So we'll notice we have the outside lines points all through here. All right, arrowing over. And now this S is getting really thick and a little weird looking. All right, next, I see that this is a little weird looking here, so I'm going to select that point and this point and arrow down a little bit. Let's see if that smooths things out. I think it does. Now, this is way too thick, I think, at this point. So I'm going to select this point, this point, this point, this point, and this one. And this one too. And we're going to arrow over, and you can see that that S is starting to get a little thinner in this area. All right. I'm going to deselect this point and this point, and now just these points are selected, and we'll arrow over a little bit more to get some more, get this a little thinner. Okay. Now, I'm getting to the point where my S is almost filling the size that I need it to. All right. And this is not an exact science. I don't necessarily, every letter in an alphabet here, every capital is not the same width. So I need to choose a point where I want to stop, and I think this is a pretty good point. Because my next letter is going to be T over here where the O would be, and I can make it join up with the other letters A and N in another way. So I'm going to hold off on making this S any wider. Okay, but I have gotten it close to the width of the L, and that's something you want to shoot for. Now, we still have this business here, and this is, every one of your letters is going to have this point where it's just like, oh man, this doesn't look right. How am I going to fix this? So we have this distortion here, all right? And right now, I'm going to turn off the red letters because I no longer need to look at them at the moment. So let's just go point by point. Now here, I've selected this point. I'm going to arrow up and over. And I'm hitting the up arrow and right arrow. Okay? And from here, I'm going to grab this handle. We'll zoom in so you can see this a little better. Grab this handle and adjust it. Okay? And I have a smooth curve here. I might come down with this a little bit and over like so. Alright, next I'm going to choose this point and do something similar, except we're going to start with the handles first. I click and take this handle and move it over. You can see it's changing the way this curve happens. I'm going to take this handle, draw it in just a little bit. Alright, and now I'm going to arrow over with it like that. Alright, next we're going to click on this and we're going to adjust the handles on this one. Bring it down and just change this curve ever so slightly so it's a little smoother through here. Alright, so I've made some changes. I know this point needs to come in a little more, like so. And maybe this point needs to come down a little bit. And this handle comes in a little bit. Same with this one. All right. I'm going to zoom out. And I'm getting this S a little bit better. You know, it's starting to look like the Superman S a little. And now, before I've gone too far with this S, It's almost done. I could do some fine tuning up here to help with these curves, maybe smooth them out. But before I go any further, I'm going to create another layer and put in the same S I put in before. Okay, do a capital S. And I want to take a look at this S and say, okay, let's see here. Now, notice that this serif is back in a little bit from this curve, all right? And that's something we want to maintain. So I'm going to draw this area out a little bit further and draw this one back in a bit, all right? And this is something you should do once you've gotten pretty far in to adjusting your letter. You want to come back in and make sure it's following some of what we would call the conventions of its original letter, all right? Now, I'm going to click and drag over these points. All right, I've got all of these selected, and we're going to draw this back in just a bit. And then I'm going to click, hold the shift key on each of these points, and this one too. Bring it out just a little more, just so that you'll notice that this letter, if you drew a line down from here, it would break this one. So this is out a little bit further, okay? And that's all we're looking for. And you can see it also on the back of the letter as well, all right? So that's looking a little better. At this point, I could come in and do some fine tuning up here, but for now, if I zoom out, we've got a pretty good looking S that fits in the shape of the L, all right? And that's the goal. That's what you're trying to do, is bring in a letter, create outlines, adjust it so it fills the space, and then move on to the next letter. How would I move on to the next letter? Well, I've already got this S here. I can click on it, double click. I've got the text tool. I change it to a capital T. And then I'm going to move this T to a letter that I want to size it to. This O, even though this is the place the T is going to go, the O is confusing me right now because it's turned to the side. So let's use the E. All right. So I hold the shift key and size this T up like so. And it's about as tall as it needs to be. Get it into the shape it's going to occupy, and I can already tell that this one is going to be a lot easier. There it is. All right, so we're going to run through this one because it's going to be a little faster. So I have the letter selected. I go to Type, Create Outlines, and I'm ready to roll. All right, I'm going to name this layer T and go to the Direct Select tool. First thing I want to do is make this serif a little thicker, all right? So I'm going to take this point, I clicked on just this one, and move it over to the right a bit. That was 3 steps. I'll do the same on the other side, exactly the same. Now, I could build this layer 1/2 at a time, this letter 1/2 at a time, and that would be a good way to do it. But if I just do everything that I'm doing the same on each side, it should work out. So 1, 2, 3 over here. And then I'm going to select this point and this point and send it to the left, 1, 2, 3. So I'm making this serif a little thicker. I'm looking for a thickness similar to this. Let's go 4, 5. There we go. Select this and this, holding the shift key. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, getting a little closer. Now this thickness here needs to change, so I'm going to click on this point, this point, this point, holding the shift key, and this one, and this one. All right. Looks like I've got an extra point here, which is interesting, and I am going to, as well as here, All right. We're going to arrow these down. And notice that allows me to get a little thickness in here. We go a little bit more. There we go. And then before I go any further, we're going to do a trick with the selection tool. So I like what I've done here so far. Both sides are the same. I go to the selection tool and it selects the entire shape. Now I can just drag it and bring it out to the width of this E. Alright, and that's just added some thickness in here. And so the last thing we need to do is just adjust the serifs down here. To do that, we use the direct select tool. And once again, let's make sure the S is locked. Click and drag over all of these points. Okay, so I've selected everything through here, but not the bottom points. I use the arrows and move them up until I've got a nice thick serif down here. Alright, I'm going to deselect and take a look and see if there's any weirdness in my letter. I kind of like it so far. I might take this serif out 5, and this one, notice I just select those two, 5, and I think that's looking pretty good. I might add a little more weight down here to this serif by making it thicker. Letters like to be heavier weighted on the bottom than the top. And that looks pretty good. Now, here's the tough thing for any word that you choose, any 4-letter word, is figuring out how to turn the second letter and make it work. So I'm going to bring it up here, and you can see that I've got some issues. I can't really have this letter break outside of the blue here. Okay, it might be able to touch it, so we'll try it right there. And I can see it's intersecting here with the S, and I would have an A, and then I have to make sure that it would just join in with the N of Stan, S-T-A-N. Alright, that's what I've got so far, and I think it could work. So I would go ahead and move on to my next letter, and then if I have to do some adjustment to the size or the style of this letter, I can come back in and do it again. Please do not use the word Stan unless you get approval from me. I want you to troubleshoot this yourself, and that's where I'll leave it today. Thank you so much for learning.